Everyone at the funeral noticed him. He was not family. He was not a colleague. He was not a friend of the deceased that anyone could identify or account for. He stood at the back of the gathered mourners in a dark coat, hands clasped in front of him, completely still, the way people stand when they are performing the posture of grief without actually feeling it. But it was not his stillness that people remembered afterward. It was his face. He was smiling. Not the small, involuntary smile that sometimes breaks through at funerals when someone shares a warm memory. Not the polite, closed expression that can be mistaken for a smile in certain lights. A real smile, wide, present, directed at nothing in particular and everything at once. The smile of someone who was exactly where they wanted to be, feeling exactly what they wanted to feel. Nobody approached him. Nobody asked who he was. People looked at him and then looked away because looking at him felt wrong in a way that was difficult to name. When the service ended, he was gone. No one saw him leave. No one saw which direction he walked. He was simply there, and then he was not. Like something the grief had briefly made visible and then absorbed back into itself. 3 weeks later, he appeared at another funeral across the city. Same coat, same stillness, same smile. Nobody knew his name. Nobody knew how he knew about the services. Nobody could explain what he wanted or why he kept coming back. But he always came back. This is the man who smiled at funerals. A legend that moves through cities the way rumors move through grief. Quietly, between people who would rather not be talking about it. Passed in low voices at the edges of the very events where he is most likely to appear. The story does not have a single fixed origin. It belongs to a category of urban legend that folklorists call a persistent stranger, a figure who appears repeatedly at the margins of social rituals, uninvited and unaccountable, whose presence violates something so fundamental about the expected behavior of human beings in a given space that the mind cannot simply file it away and move on. Funerals are one of the most tightly governed social spaces that exist. The rules are unspoken but absolute. You dress a certain way. You speak at a certain volume. You arrange your face into expressions that communicate the appropriate emotional register. You do not laugh unless laughter is sanctioned by the context. You do not smile unless the smile is one of remembrance, of warmth, of shared love for the person being mourned. A genuine smile at a funeral, an unguarded, present, satisfied smile, is one of the most viscerally wrong things a human face can do in a social context. It does not just break the rules of the ritual. It suggests that whoever is wearing that smile is operating from a completely different set of values than everyone around them. That they are attending the funeral for a reason that has nothing to do with grief. That whatever they are getting from the event is something the grieving people around them would not want to give if they understood what it was. And that is the engine of the legend. Not what he does. He does nothing. He stands and he smiles and he leaves. The horror is entirely in the question of why. The explanations people generate for the man who smiled at funerals say more about the fears of the person generating them than they do about the figure himself. Some accounts suggest he is simply a deeply disturbed individual, someone who derives pleasure from grief in the way that certain psychological conditions can invert normal emotional responses, producing satisfaction where sadness is expected. This explanation is disturbing enough on its own. A living person present in a crowd of mourners feeding on their pain in some private and invisible way. Other accounts go further. They suggest that the man is not feeding on grief exactly, but on something adjacent to it. On the specific energy of a moment when the membrane between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. Funerals exist at a threshold. They are the ritual by which the living formally acknowledge the passage of someone from one state of existence to another. Some traditions across multiple cultures hold that this threshold is real, that the moment of formal mourning is a moment when something passes through, when the boundary is permeable in ways that it is not at any other time. The man who smiled at funerals, in these versions of the legend, is smiling because he can see what the mourners cannot. He is smiling because the threshold is open, and what is coming through it is something only he has the vision or the nature to perceive. He attends funerals not to mourn and not to feed, but to witness, to be present at a crossing that most people experience only from the near side, never understanding what is happening on the other. Whether that makes him more or less frightening depends entirely on what you believe about what waits on the other side of that crossing. There are also accounts, darker, less easy to dismiss, in which the man who smiled at funerals is connected to the deaths themselves. In these versions, people begin to notice a pattern. The funerals he attends are not random. They cluster. The deceased share something, an age range, a neighborhood, a cause of death, a connection to one another that the mourners do not initially see. And when someone finally maps the pattern and traces it back far enough, they find that the man appeared before some of these deaths, not just after them. That he was seen near the homes of people who had not yet died, standing on the pavement outside, still, watching, smiling. In these versions, the smile is not a response to grief. It is anticipation of it. He is not attending the funerals because people have died. People are dying because he is attending. That version of the legend transforms him from a disturbing presence into something far older and far colder. A figure that exists in folklore across dozens of cultures, the omen of death, the entity whose appearance precedes loss rather than following it, the thing that knows before you do, the thing that stands outside your house and smiles because it already knows what is coming for the person inside. And it is patient, and it is certain, and it has nowhere else to be. The reason this legend endures is the same reason all the best legends endure. It takes something real, a violation of social expectations so jarring that it lodges permanently in the memory of everyone who witnesses it, and it builds an architecture of meaning around it that the original incident cannot contain on its own. Someone, somewhere, at some point, almost certainly saw a man smiling at a funeral, and could not explain it, and could not stop thinking about it, and told someone else, and the telling shaped itself over time into something with edges and weight and the texture of a warning. Because that is what this story is. Underneath the supernatural architecture, underneath the questions about what he sees and what he wants and whether he causes the deaths he attends, it is a warning about the people who move through the rituals of human life without being bound by them, who stand in the spaces of grief and feel something entirely different from what the space is designed to produce, who smile where you cannot imagine smiling, and whose reasons for being there you will never fully know. They are in every city. They attend every kind of gathering. They stand at the edges of crowds and their faces do not match the room. And most of the time you look at them and you look away, because looking at them for too long feels like something you cannot take back. So the next time you are at a funeral, and you will be, we all will be, take a moment to look at the faces around you, the ones at the back, the ones you do not recognize, the ones standing slightly apart from the grief as if watching it rather than feeling it. Find the one who is smiling, and then decide whether you want to know why. If this one stayed with you, hit subscribe, because we go deep into the figures, the legends, and the presences that move through human life without ever fully belonging to it. Drop a comment and tell us which story you want us to cover next. Until then, keep your eyes on the back of the room.